Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I'll kick us off. Again, welcome. We are so grateful that you're choosing to spend this time with us and learning about our newest student-facing feature, Brisk Boost, which we're really excited to dive into deeper with. I am Jessica. I work on the marketing and community team over at Brisk. A couple of quick reminders. As Armand mentioned, this call is set up as a meeting. So we would ask that as we're going through demos and stuff, please stay on mute, but please put comments, thoughts, questions, feelings, anything and everything in the chat. I will engage with you there. And then I'll also be fielding some Q&A questions at the end of our time together today. And Brisk Boost, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that is, and then Armand is going to take it away and show you what that looks like in action. So just like Brisk allows you to take your favorite online content and resources and turn them into new resources and tools for your students and for learning, now you can take any content that is online that is something that you would want your students to learn from, interact with, and boost it to them. So using a really similar flow to what you're used to using Brisk, now your students have the opportunity to have a really interactive and engaging learning experience with those online content pieces and resources that you know and love. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Armand to take it away and show you more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica. And just to share a little bit more about the context and why we actually decided to build Brisk, what we've heard is this transition, which has been surprising to me as someone who's worked in education for the last 10 years. This transition from, I think, back in 2020, in the beginning of 2023, when ChatGPT came out, this real conversation around banning AI for students and really thinking a lot about, preventing students from using AI. I think last academic year, we started to hear a lot about how teachers were incorporating AI into their workflows, tools like Brisk Teaching that could really make it easier to teach by generating things like lesson plans or feedback. And this school year, we're starting to hear that conversation shift and actually a lot of curiosity about how students might be able to incorporate AI directly into the classroom and how teachers can use it as an engagement tool or an assessment tool. So we think that that's a really exciting opportunity. But for us, we really wanted to think about what did teachers really love about Brisk and how can we incorporate those principles into the development of Boost. In addition to kind of hearing from educators that they really like some of the parts about what AI provides, but also wanted it to align to things that they were doing in their classroom, their own lesson objectives, their own focuses, and really drive students towards an outcome rather than a open-ended AI chat. And so as we developed Boost, we really started to think about how could we really put a Brisk flavor on it, but also really think about instructional outcomes as a result. And that's actually why Michelle is on this call, is because we really see Boost as an academic tool that can be really helpful as you support the engagement of your students and to really try to challenge them and meet them exactly where they are, which I think is one of the powerful parts of AI and something that we are excited to explore with you all.
Yeah,
Michelle,
no
add
question
anything?
about it, Armand. Student engagement is the thing, and with these new tools, it just takes the ceiling off of what's possible. I'm excited to explore this with you.
Absolutely. And feel free to use the chat as an opportunity to kind of share your thoughts as well as we kind of go through this. So what I'm going to do is you are seeing my screen. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of different use cases and just like kind of walk, if you have questions or thoughts about can Boost do this, feel free to use the chat as a way to kind of engage. Again, we're still in the early development of this. So if you have ideas or feedback or future ideas, would love to hear. So I'm going to start with an online textbook because we've heard from a lot of educators that they're already using content like online textbooks and they want to be able to use it as a starting point to create an engaging AI activity. So if you look here, you're probably familiar with a couple of the tools here, the create option, the feedback option, the change reading level option. And what you'll see here is also the boost student activity option. And so you see this little red backpack here. And so really the nice thing about Brisk is that it works where you're working. So we're looking at this online textbook, we could create something as a result. And so our question was, what if you could boost this type of content? And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to click Boost Student Activity. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull up this menu of options here. And we have a couple of options. We can change the language. For example, if you're a foreign language teacher or you just support students in a different country where there's a different language that's taught, the grade level as well. In addition to, if you're part of the school and district's plan, you can attach specific standards that you might want to assess students on as well or engage them with.
Yeah, with the languages, also for English language learners. I mean, getting comprehensible input is so important, and this makes it very easy.
100%. And we've actually had a lot of foreign language teachers basically use this for students to practice Spanish on their own. Obviously, speaking or typing out content is a great way to engage students. And so, especially for foreign language teachers, I think this is an amazing opportunity. So what you'll see here are a couple of options here, a tutor, a hook, character chat, etc., to really engage students. We also have a couple of assessment mechanisms, like a pulse check and an exit ticket. We will be releasing very shortly 2 additional options. And so write is for feedback. And so it offers a personalized writing coach and feedback that we've heard can be really helpful. And then we also have a reflection tool as well that we'll be releasing shortly. But for the time being, I'm going to start with the engage tools. I'm going to start with tutor. And when I press next, what's going to happen is we're going to use that content from that online textbook to create learning objectives the students will need to be able to work through. And so these learning objectives are not something that come out of nowhere. They're actually directly tied to that content that was in that online textbook. In addition to here, you can see that we've also generated a role that's really tailored to that content as well. So it's not like you're giving your students ChatGPT, you're actually giving your students a version of ChatGPT almost that is personalized directly to that content. You can go in and modify it if you want. This is all editable. And so we found that, educators might say, hey, I actually want it to include this type of tone as well, or I want it to provide additional support when students are stuck. And so what you'll see next is kind of this flow. So you can customize this view and then preview it exactly what your students will see. And so you'll see the content is on the left-hand side. This is a part of the preview of what the students will see. So the students can engage with this content, read it, and then when they're ready to go, they can press let's go. And this chat experience will be tailored to this content right here. And you think of a time you've used the scientific in everyday life, maybe without even realizing it, when I'm cooking and I need to know whether the meat is cooked. We also have text to speech and speech to text. And you can see how learning objectives kind of grow over time. And this is something that we've heard has been really helpful for educators, which is creating that sense of done when a student is actually using AI. And you'll see here, as the student kind of completes additional steps, these little circles will get filled in. So the students know exactly where they need to be going as well. And we also have speech to text here. If we said, hey, maybe I want to customize this and I actually don't want my students to see the underlying textbook, for example, this might be a pulse check or an exit ticket, I can remove that content so the students only see this chat experience. If, for example, I'm offering my students a tutor and I just want them to kind of get support when they need it, but not necessarily be assessed on learning objectives, I can remove that as well. And so the students won't necessarily feel like they need to reach a sense of completion as well. So I really encourage you to play around with this because it gives you the ability to kind of really modify this and make this your own before sharing it with students. I'm going to pause and check in if anyone has any questions.
I just wanted to add the power of students being able to see their own progress and demonstration of those learning objectives, and the teacher's ability to monitor students' progress towards them as well is very powerful.
We did get one quick question. Are there age restrictions for students using this?
So that's a great question. So we are FERPA and COPPA compliant. So it's really about your school's own restrictions rather than it being something that is an age restriction on our end. We've heard from many educators that ChatGPT's restrictions are often a barrier to enabling students to basically incorporate AI into their learning. And because we're not using ChatGPT and we're actually using a large language model that we're hosting on our own servers, those restrictions don't apply. And for good reason, because we have really tailored this to make it safe. And so this isn't like providing just ChatGPT to your students. And I'll show you a little bit of the content moderation pieces, particularly for middle schoolers, I know often are so important. And so I'll show you that moderation panel in a second. Okay, I'll keep going. But if any questions come up, please let me know and we can go through them. So I'm going to press share with students. So let's say, I've kind of worked through anything that I need to. I previewed it and I basically went back and forth and modified the role or the lesson objectives to really make sure it feels right for my students. Um, I can press share with students. And what this is going to allow me to do is select a class that I want to share it with. Now, I've created a lot of classes already. I'm going to show you, I'm going to create a new class just to show you what that experience looks like. So when I click add new class, hold on one second. I can say, for example, this was a biology kind of textbook. So honors period 5. And I can add that. Now, what I can do is I have a couple of options here. I can require email login. So this is great, especially because in the future we'll be adding the ability to track a student over time. So be able to see how their progress over time, their AI literacy, and see their scores. And so if you're looking for a more persistent concept of a student that you can track, highly advise the email login. Unfortunately, some districts do block like Google sign in. And so we're offering this other option, which is called name login only. And that only requires a student to input their name to be used. And this is often faster just to get started because students don't necessarily need to go through the process of login. But this is a one-time activity and you won't be able to see students complete activities over time and track their progress. So if your students can use the email login, we definitely advise it because it provides a little bit more of a concept of a student in a class. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to press share, and you'll see right here, your Boost activity is ready to share. We've found that there's a couple of different ways you might want to share this activity with students. If you want to potentially, basically share this code on the whiteboard and just have all of your students go to boost.show to input their code. That's a really quick way to do this. If, for example, you want to add a Boost activity to Google Classroom or a different learning management system and you just need a link, you can really quickly press copy link and then share it in LMS or somewhere online. Next, what you'll see here is this mock student. So this student is a representation of what you might see as once you've assigned this, and you can see this learning objective progress here. I'm going to jump to actually a monitor usage, a page which basically has a bunch of students already engaged in this, so you can see what that looks like. So I'll just really quickly open up something else that's already been started. Let's try this one. And you can see how if you've assigned this to many students, you can see that you can basically track their learning objective progress as the class goes through. Yellow means that they've halfway accomplished that learning objective. Green means they've completed it. As someone basically asked, we do have content moderation, and so you can see here that content has been marked as inappropriate and it's now paused. And you can see that this is an inappropriate comment. So we basically flag content that's inappropriate from like a profanity perspective, but also that things that might include self-harm or things that could be problematic from that end. And you can see here the number of students that are engaged in my class as well. I'm gonna pause there and ask if anyone has any questions. And Michelle, if you want to share a little bit about how you might use this in the classroom.
Armand, does it automatically pause the student's interaction with Boost if something is flagged as inappropriate?
We are currently not doing that, but we are flagging it directly to the student, to the teacher. And the reason why is sometimes different expectations around content moderation look different in different classrooms. And we didn't want to take an editorial decision on kind of what the line is. And so we'd definitely defer to the teacher on that front before it gets paused.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that while there are times when a teacher will want to boost the same content with the same learning objectives to an entire class, there are also times when we want to personalize that learning or change the reading level for a piece of content that we're boosting to students. And so I just want to double click on the fact that you can create smaller classes that have differentiated materials that are being boosted to them.
Exactly. And so, for example, an example I've heard from a lot of educators is for teachers who are supporting bilingual classes where some students might be engaging in a different, might need a different language. You could basically create a tailored version in Spanish and then one in English as well.
Yeah, I also had a teacher in a middle school who was using the brainstorming feature to generate ideas for research projects and wanted the students to, have a wide range of resources that they could use. And that's another way. We have a couple of questions about data privacy. What about data privacy? Is data contained?
I think so. Questions around data privacy. I think generally, Brisk has a robust data privacy system. So we've basically signed the student privacy pledge, which is actually the most robust indication of like student privacy. This actually is like more on the European standards than on the US. We're GDPR compliant and also do a lot on the data privacy front. If you are in the US, we do sign data privacy agreements. And so if your district hasn't kind of provided us one, we'd be happy to review it and basically move forward there.
Great, thank you. And Renaud had one more question about can the teacher moderator language be changed from English? Absolutely. If the teachers around the world are using Brisk and Boost and can have the entire experience in their language of choice.
Yeah. Now it's in French.
Love it. And I see that you have a couple of different student-facing resources up at the top of your screen, Armand. I would be excited to see what that flow could look like in some different use cases.
100%. Thanks. Thanks, Jessica. So here is a presentation I actually created using Brisk. And what I really love about how we're thinking about Boost is rather than thinking about, okay, you had what you were doing with Brisk over here, and then Boost is something completely separate. It's really about how can you think about what I've heard from educators when they really loved Brisk is, hey, I created a presentation potentially with Brisk, or maybe I already had a presentation and I wanted to create a Google form quiz, and then I wanted to create a lesson plan about it. And that like concept of like the interconnectedness of teaching is something that I think I've found is really unique that AI can do in a really great job that a lot of pre-AI teachers were thinking about all these separate tabs as separate things they were doing as like individual workflows that really didn't have any connection. And so I think when we thought about Boost, we really wanted to encourage that same concept of interconnectedness. And so this is a presentation that we created using Brisk. You might be familiar with this template. But when I click Boost Student Activity here, it can use that presentation as a starting point to create something. Let's say we went over this in class and I want to create a quick 3 to 5 minute exit ticket about this to make sure students kind of understood the concepts, just so I personally know what I need to cover next class. So we've created this learning objective. It's included a couple of points, the two key components of an ecosystem. We have this rule that we kind of talked about before. But now students will have access to this presentation. Something that's really neat that we actually just did yesterday is now you also see this viewer or player for the slide presentation. And so as a student, you'll be able to go through this presentation and also continue to kind of engage in this exit ticket and answer questions to complete learning objectives. And so, yeah, so this is something I would definitely recommend trying. I'll also just show you what it would look like if I shared this with students. So I'm just going to do this really quickly. One thing I'll mention that we're doing shortly is for Google Files, you'll be able to get a copy of that. You'll be able to create a copy for your students. And so every student will be able to get their own Google presentation or Google Doc. And so we're excited about that because we know a lot of educators love Brisk's feedback and have wanted to offer feedback opportunities with students. And so this will create an opportunity to be able to assign a student their own Google Doc or presentation that's a copy of your original template to be able to complete on for them to be able to complete and potentially get a writing coach as a result. So stay tuned for that. And when I share this with students, the same type of flow that you kind of saw there, and can email the 10 students as well. I'll just share really quickly, this would also work on a YouTube video, and we found that that has been incredibly helpful as well. So the student can watch the YouTube video on the left-hand side and complete questions that cover it. And so definitely would recommend you check out the YouTube video integration too. One thing that I'll also mention that we have just started to work on, or we've just kind of allowed teachers to do, is you can also work on this with presentations or with PowerPoints as well. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. So I have this drive folder. This is actually just the online textbook that you saw earlier, but I downloaded it as a PDF. And say this was a textbook that you have as an educator, you have the PDF version. You can boost that student activity. You can potentially create a hook for it, for example. And this PDF will also show up as well. The one thing I'll say here is you need to create the PDF when it actually has this link right here, just to make sure that that works. And students will be able to have access to this online textbook and also engage in a chat about it as well. So something to also try out. Cool. I know we covered a lot of ground. Wanted to create space for any additional questions as well.
Yeah, that was awesome. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. So let's say that a student wants to start their Boost activity or their Boost chat now, and then they need to finish it later. Will they have access to their previous their Boost chats, Boost experiences?
100%. So this is admittedly a little bit easier if you provide the login information, because the student will basically have a home, and maybe I can show you what this looks like. So let's take a activity we were looking at and open up. Jessica, can you confirm that you can see both of my tabs?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'm opening up a different Chrome profile just so you can see what students see. So I'm going to go to boost.show. And join class. And to Renad, you don't need to actually have the Brisk extension installed. One of the nice things about Boost is all students need to do is go and access this link at boost.show. As you can see here, as a student, I have this and I can watch this YouTube video and complete it. As a student, if I want to go back to a different activity that I might have been assigned earlier, we have something called Student Home, and you'll be able to see all of the classes that have been assigned to you and specific activities that have been completed. Now, if you haven't used the email login, that's a little bit more complicated. The student would essentially have to go back to boost.show, put in that code, and then rejoin that class and see that activity. So they would still have progress there. It's just a little bit harder for them to go back. So if your students can log in using email, we highly recommend it, because then even if they switch devices, they'll still be able to access that content, which is something that for now, if you don't use that, you basically have to use the same device and log in again with the same name.
Love it. Let's talk a little bit more about character chat, or honestly, just Brisk Boost chat in general. What are some guardrails that we have in place so that the character or the student doesn't go off the rails?
I would love to start that one if I could, because I've done a lot of AI response testing with Boost, and I have been so impressed. The importance of the learning objectives, the importance of the AI role as they are written out before the student receives the Boost activity is important. But I have tested the chatbot repeatedly thinking about ways that my students might respond in a chat, or in ways that, you know, might be inappropriate in schools. And there are incredible guardrails that make this a very safe and effective learning system. And the chatbot repeatedly says, I can see you're feeling silly today, or, you know, that's a good question, but we're talking about, and continually redirects the student. So I encourage you to experience Boost and experience those chats as well.
And I think what's so important, one of our key principles at Brisk is, you know, teacher in the loop. And so that's really why before even sharing any type of Boost activity, we provide a preview of that activity to you so that you can go and kind of play around with it, try to get in your middle school mindset, you know, 12, like 13, 14-year-old mindset. Make sure that you feel confident and comfortable with the responses before you share it with students, because, you know, you should not take our word for it. I think really in this moment of AI literacy and kind of incorporating AI into the classroom, it's really about building your confidence and your comfort level. Because for as much as we can say that we've tested around this, it's important for you to build your own personal confidence in these systems before sharing it with students, because this is a really powerful technology, and we've really done our work on making sure that it's safe. But I think it's also important as educators to be comfortable with it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing I want to share about the chat and about Boost is, again, teachers are selecting the source material that they're sending to students. And that's another powerful guardrail that the AI has in using that source material. The other thing is that it's not just a chat with a historical figure or with a character from a book. You can create a story about the butterfly life cycle, and the students can talk to the butterfly. So it's really only limited by our imaginations.
We do have a few more questions, and our team has time to stay on and answer those, but just in case you have to jump, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. I wanted to take a second to thank you again for being here. We are so grateful for you all. Brisk is a fairly new tool, and you all using it and adopting it and sharing about it with your coworkers and your colleagues and your students truly means the world to us. As a reminder, you can stay connected to our community by joining our Facebook group, Educators Saving Time with AI, and of course, a plug for our social media channels. We're at Brisk Teaching anywhere and everywhere that you're on social media. So if you have to jump, thank you again for joining us. If there's ever anything we can do to be helpful, please reach out. As Armand said, we love getting your feedback, your ideas, your suggestions, what's working and what's not. And with that, we'll go ahead and jump into these last couple of questions that are in the chat. And if you have more questions that you want answered, feel free to stay on and chat with us. Michelle, we got a great question about the SAMR model and how this fits into modification. How could it fit into redefinition? Do you want to speak to that?
You bet. For those who don't know the SAMR model, it is an acronym for how technology is used to change a student's learning experience. It's substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And so the question was, how does Boost redefine or fit into redefinition? And I would say that with Boost, students are able to create much more sophisticated responses to more complex questions. And so project-based learning, for example, students might take on more complex issues related to how climate change is affecting their local areas, and be able to, with the support of the AI, develop solutions that they can then present to their city council or something like that. That's one way that I think of Boost related to the SAMR model and redefinition.
Love it. Are there any other questions that we can answer? And feel free to come off mute and ask or put them in the chat. Well, if you think of any at all, we are here. We're ready to answer questions, ready to support you however we can. And with that, I hope you have the most fabulous day. We'll send out this recording to everyone who attended and everyone who registered. And we can't wait for you to try out Boost and let us know what you think.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.